My least favorite part of the tax code is what I'm going to call the widow or widower's penalty. And it doesn't mean it has to be your least favorite part of the tax code. Doesn't mean it's the worst part of the tax code, but it's my least favorite part because it's something that I've ran into in real life with my clients. And it's something that until it happens to you, don't quite understand how annoying it actually is to possibly see your tax rate double when your spouse passes away. So let's jump into how exactly that can happen. All right, so let's take a look here. So what we're looking at, and shout out again to Dan at 55e.co. He's brilliant with these spreadsheets, and he has a YouTube channel. I'll put a link in the description to that. Shout out to him for building out this spreadsheet. I love it for quick and dirty calculations like this. So we're going to start with a married couple in retirement, and we're going to say they're both over 65. And they're bringing in $50,000 a year in Social Security, no pension. We'll assume no interest, and we'll say $10,000 in dividends and long-term gains, and then they have $1 million in a tax-deferred retirement account. And we're going to say that they're withdrawing. I'm going to do $40,000. So they're withdrawing $40,000 a year, which gives them a total gross income of 50 plus 10 plus 40 of 100,000. So gross income of 100,000. And you'll actually notice that they're only getting taxed on 65% of their Social Security. So even with the gross income of 100,000, they still aren't getting taxed on the max 85% of Social Security. And keep in mind, that does not mean that they're getting taxed at a rate of 65 or 85%, just that 65% of their Social Security is being taxed. Anyway, we scroll down here, and their effective tax rate at the federal level is only 4.6%. Not bad at all in retirement. In fact, I'd say that's really good. And don't get me wrong, there's probably other tax planning items we might be doing, they might be doing. But keeping it simple here, 4.6% effective rate. Now, what happens when one spouse dies? And this is my least favorite part of the tax code. So now, instead of the filing status being married filing jointly, we're going to single. And what happens when one spouse passes away? You lose one Social Security. You lose the lower one. And so in this case, we're going to pretend like it was $30,000 for one and $20,000 for another. So we're just going to say $30,000 remains. The qualified dividends, long-term capital gains, we're going to pretend that doesn't change. And they still have $1 million in the tax-deferred retirement account. Now, I'm going to start by showing that they continue, or the surviving spouse only withdraws $40,000 still. But the reality is I'm not sure that's realistic because their gross income just went from $100,000 when there were two spouses living to now only $80,000. Could the surviving spouse get away with that? Maybe. But in my experience, I've seen that expenses really don't go down that much when one spouse passes away. So now we scroll down here. What is the new tax rate? Well, first of all, now you can see that 85% of that $30,000 remaining Social Security is getting taxed. And then we get to the effective tax rate. The new effective tax rate is 9.7%, double what it was when they were married filing jointly. And remember what I said. So, and also, by the way, it added about $3,000 in taxes. So not only did you lose $20,000 in Social Security, but you owed an extra $3,000 in taxes. So the reality is they probably would have to, the surviving spouse would probably have to withdraw more. Let's say they have to withdraw $50,000 to make ends meet. What does that do to the tax rate? Gets all the way up to 11%. Now, don't get me wrong. Still, 11% at the federal level, that's not a high tax rate. It's could be way worse. But I just hate that you are penalized for your spouse passing away. You built a life together. You saved for retirement together. Whatever it may be, you made sacrifices. And now all of a sudden, when a spouse passes away, your tax situation gets worse. Maybe it makes sense, but I can't figure out why it makes sense. Really annoys me. And that right there is how your tax rate can double with what I consider the most annoying part of our tax code. All right, now it's important to note that this penalty doesn't go into effect the year that the spouse dies. It happens the year after. I know that there's probably way bigger fish to fry for Congress and for the IRS, but man, I wish they would do something about that, even if it means creating a new filing status, which they've kind of done in the past. Qualifying widower status, which only qualifies if you have dependents. But just for, the typical retiree couple, I just hate that they build a life together and all of a sudden their tax rate can double when they lose a spouse. This also just really illustrates why it's so important to do the tax planning, do the work ahead of time while everything's good, so that when things get bad, you've already planned for it. So, do you agree with me? Am I way off base? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this, if you liked the discussion, give this video a like, subscribe, and until next time, have a great rest of your day.